Welcome to Our Scars Speak. My name is Christina Miner. I am the host of this podcast. And before we begin, I'd like to give a disclaimer that we are not claiming to be medical professionals or giving suggestions or telling you any advice about your treatment plan. Make sure you follow your doctor's orders only. And we're not being held liable for anything that's discussed here based off our own personal stories and experiences. So tonight we have here for the girls founders, we have René and Mary Beth. Ladies, thank you for everything that you have done for all of us. I am so grateful that you even came on tonight. You've changed my life by the vision that you all had and still have. And I'm just so in awe of both of you. And I'm so thankful that you came on to Our Scars Speak tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's such a huge privilege to be here with you and to be part of this whole experience with you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Well, and we're so proud of you.
Aww.
All you're doing for all these women is fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And honestly, where advocacy even started, I mean, I've always had a big mouth, but it's like I've been advocating for years before I was diagnosed. But truthfully, when I became part of Here for the Girls and really seeing what you all were doing, it inspired me even more to advocate and try to see exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And so, yes, thank you. Thank you so, so much. So as we start, I love to ask people, who are they? So we're going to start with Miss René. René, so tell everyone, who's René? Not René, the breast cancer survivor. Like, who are you? How do you describe yourself as?
Well, first of all, I'm a Texan. That's very important because because I act like a Texan and grew up there. So I'm used to the wild being wild, basically. Okay. So I am a little wild. I am a mother of 2 grown children, have a great husband, married 45 years, came to Virginia for school and met my best friend and ended up back here and then met my husband. So I've been in Virginia since, if I tell you this, then you're going to know how very old I am, 1976. But okay. Let's see, jobs, I've worked in public relations and marketing and fundraising and politics. I went to law school when I turned 30. And so I practiced law for a while. And then I taught at the William and Mary Law School as an adjunct while I raised my family. And so I was actually doing that part-time. That's what an adjunct does, is part-time, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So hobbies, I do lunch.
Yeah, it's all about the food for both of us.
I know, but thank you, you sweet Mary Beth. But that means what I do is I love to connect to people, and over food is a great way to connect. And you know, your topic, your name is Our Scars Speak. Well, my motto is we're all cracked pots, and the only way we connect is through our cracks.
Wow.
And that if you put a light in a whole pot, you don't see it. But if you put it in a cracked pot, the light comes out all the cracks. So I do lunch to share my crackedness with other people. And it's amazing what happens. So I do lunch.
I love it. Oh, wow. I like that about the crack pots. I hadn't heard that before, but that's beautiful.
Well, it's very similar to what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we started our whole deal because we realized young women and all women needed to know the things we wish we'd known. Right. You're doing the same thing. So we're just going to be here cheering you on through the whole time you're doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Mary Beth.
Mary Beth, let's go. Who is Mary Beth?
So I am also a mother. I have 3 grown sons. They were very young when I was diagnosed 17 years ago, but they're now 20, 23, and 25. They're all still at home. I affectionately call them the squatters. And I'm really actually happy to have them at home because I know once they move out into the world, I will miss them. Yeah. So one of the greatest successes I think I've had is raising young men who know how to go into the world and respect people and be kind. I have the most amazing husband, and I met him in my front yard.
Okay.
Yeah, because I like to joke that someone thought that I wouldn't be able to find the right person on my own, so they just plopped him in my front yard. He was pretty hard to miss. And
Okay.
we've been together 26, we've been married 26 years. So
Oh,
he's
wow.
been a steadfast part of my life. I was a human resources professional prior to my diagnosis, and a Fortune 500 executive. And then I was diagnosed, and we'll talk about how the origin story of Beyond Boobs that's now here for the girls. But after leaving or stepping away from Here for the Girls, I started working as a consultant to help small businesses succeed. And both the businesses that I worked with happened to be in the healthcare field, which is interesting, not by design, it just works that way. I think I have always wanted to serve and be in a capacity where I can help other people, and in whatever way, shape, or form that takes. I also do lunch, and I volunteer, and I love to travel the world. I have a free spirit and lots of wanderlust. And I also love to read and cook, entertain. And my husband and I have a Sunday morning date where we ride the Capitol Trail on our bicycles, and I power walk.
Okay.
So that's how I stay busy.
I love it. I love it. So speaking of which, your diagnosis. So we have who you are, but even before the diagnosis though, if both of you, and you can, I don't know how you all want to do this because I don't know when your stories kind of intertwine, if it was at the group or whether at treatment, because I want people to hear how you all want to, talk about that. But the one thing that I want to know is like, what was life like? If you don't mind, how old were you, around how old you were, or what was going on in your lives when you got diagnosed? And you both can take turns, because I know at one point you obviously didn't know each other. So whoever would like to speak first, just kind of give us an insight of what was going on in your life before diagnosis and how old you were.
Renee, why don't you start?
Okay. That makes sense because I was diagnosed 4 years before Mary Beth.
Okay.
So I was raising my children. At that point, my daughter, well, she was 11 when I was diagnosed. I had my first biopsy when I was 49. And I think I don't know if they missed it or what, but 3 years later, they found it, and it was invasive lobular and ductal carcinoma. And isn't this funny? It's been 21 years, and we were just right before the show started. I'm trying to remember what stage I was.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I think I was stage 2, but I could have been stage 1. It was not in my lymph nodes.
Okay.
I had a lumpectomy and radiation. I thankfully did not have to have chemotherapy. And I had that, I didn't mention this when you asked who I was.
Mhm.
For years before my diagnosis, I had been dressing up as the Good Health Fairy and visiting people in the hospital. And that had just been, it had been a God thing. A friend of mine's husband had cancer, and he was really down. And so I was taking him balloons and walked by my very young daughter's dress up box. And that goes back to that wild part. I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to dress up? So I dressed up as a fairy, and it worked. I took the balloons, and he saw me, and he laughed, and it worked. And so people started calling me to come visit so-and-so in the hospital, or come to the senior health fair, or come to the homeless Thanksgiving dinner. So this fairy went to a lot of places, but I digress. I can't even remember what the question was, how we met. Okay.
No, it was
your
about,
diagnosis.
your diagnosis. Like, what was life like before you even got diagnosed? Did you have a
So-
job? You have small kids?
I did. I had a job, had small kids, and I thought I was in charge of the universe, right? I was in control. I was a control freak.
Okay.
The first time I ever realized what lack of control was when they walked in and said, we weren't so lucky this time. This time you have breast cancer.
Wow.
And my husband was sitting there with me. And at that moment, he grabbed my right hand and the Lord grabbed my left, and neither ever let go through that process. And there have been times in my life when my faith has really, I've seen it. I've seen my relationship with my higher power.
Mhm.
I've seen that higher power show up. This was one of those times. My whole journey for that. It was just, he was there, and I was embraced, and it was an amazing thing for me to have that happen.
Right.
But I sure found out what no control is.
We found out very quickly.
Yes, we do. And then I'll let Mary Beth tell hers, but I will say this. So there was a retreat that a local hospital did every year for breast cancer survivors of all ages. And I went, you had to be a year out from your diagnosis. I went, and it was so great. It was to help you learn how to be a survivor, like healthy eating and taking care of yourself. They had a psychologist there and yoga classes, and yoga, you did yoga and you did massage and just all this. And then there was a time that you had tea with the doctors and you could ask them questions. I thought it was so great. I said, I would like to help. So I started coming back every year as the Good Health Fairy, and I would open it and then stay all day. So 4 years later, now I give it over to Mary Beth.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So the really interesting thing is, before I ever had breast cancer, I became aware of Renee through her alter ego, the Good Health Fairy, because I remember there was an article written about her in the paper.
Oh,
And the reason, and I remember you were wearing that green dress, right, Renee? And you got your hip kind of tilted up and you got your little wand. Yeah, so they did an article. And the reason it resonated with me, even though I hadn't had breast cancer at that point, was because my mother had breast cancer at the age of 40. And my grandmother also had breast cancer at the age of 40. And my grandmother lived, a regular life and died of unrelated causes. But my mother passed away at the age of 55. So she lasted, it was diagnosed very early, but it came back 12 years later. And she had metastatic breast cancer for 3 years before passing on. So I didn't like to think about breast cancer. I was kind of in that denial thing, like, it's not going to happen to me. But when I saw that article, she looked so fabulous. It really touched me. And I took the time to read it, even though everything breast cancer scared me. So anyway, what I was doing when I was diagnosed was just minding my own damn business, like most of us are.
exactly.
And hope it was okay to say.
No, that's fine. You're fine.
So I had recently left the executive human resources job that I had been doing, and I did not leave on my own volition. They had done a corporate reorganization, and the company was in Florida and I was in Virginia, and we didn't want to move back to Florida for me to continue working with the company. So I opted for a severance package, but it was a really, really stressful time because I was the sole breadwinner. My husband was a stay-at-home dad, and at the time the kids were 3, 6, and 8.
7. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, 3, 6, and 7. And so it was really stressful leading up to the diagnosis, because I didn't know, I started looking for a job. What was I going to do? And I had always dreamed of doing my own thing. So I bought into a franchise. It was like a coaching franchise to help people with business. I mean, it's so funny how things come full circle.
Yeah, came back.
So, yeah. So anyway, I remember joining a networking group with that business. And as soon as I started, we invested our life savings into it. My husband's a stay-at-home dad. He's not making anything. And my second meeting of that networking group is when I told them I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And that particular group, the business community, was very supportive. So was my family through absolutely everything, and they continue to be to this day. But my diagnosis was stage 2B, she thinks, because I did neoadjuvant chemo. I did chemo before I had surgery. So by the time they did the surgery, I had a bilateral mastectomy and radiation. But prior to that, I had 16 rounds of bad stuff, the red devil. And then I dose dense, or 8. I don't know. It's been, the good thing is, like Renee, it's like I've kind of gotten rid of that. I've got other more important things to think about now. But I do remember my surgery was on November 1st because it was the day after Halloween, and that date, I don't know that I'll ever forget that. Right. But anyway, the radiation, the chemo I thought was the worst, and the surgery was hard, and I opted not to have reconstruction, which to me was one of the best choices that I made. And I had a lot of influence from my surgeon because originally I wanted to do reconstruction, and it's such a personal decision for everybody. But for me, not having it has been the best thing. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got through it. And then even though my mother and my grandmother both had it, I've had all of the genetic testing that's available. And when new panels come up, my oncologist will go ahead and test me. And so far, even though there's probably some type of something going on, they haven't discovered it yet.
Okay. And so Renee, did you also have family history or no?
So I had an aunt who was diagnosed, of my father's side, who was diagnosed at 55. I had just turned 51 when they finally was diagnosed. Or maybe she was diagnosed earlier than that and died at 55. But no, back then, that was 21 years ago. When they ask about your family history, they never ask about anything beyond your immediate family. So back then, they asked about my mother and father and my grandparents, but nobody asked about aunts and uncles back then.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And the other thing is, back then, and I'm probably still today, you think, oh, well, I don't have a family history, so I don't have to worry. But family history is only involved in 10% of all breast cancer diagnoses. And that's something that's one of the things we wanted to get the word out about. That's one of the many things, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Absolutely, because I know I didn't have any family history, and nor did the genetic testing come back for anything. But of course, Dr. Spina is going to check me ever so often, just like you're being checked, Mary Beth. But you're right. A lot of people, there's no gene link. Anything. Yeah. Well, they haven't found one. Like Spina always tells me, like, we haven't found it yet, but you probably have somewhere. Well,
the other thing is that in that family history of the 10% of all breast cancers, I think the genetic link is, so far it's only been like 2 to 3%.
Yeah, it's low.
So it's even smaller than that. Right. So there's got to be something in our environment, in the foods we eat, the things we put on our bodies. I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's just weird.
Because things have changed throughout the years anyway, like with the whole environment, like you said. So there's really no telling. And honestly, in the United States, we even provide certain foods that some other countries don't, that are very carcinogenic. And so we have to, take all those things into consideration, which is a lot because looking at what we have here.
Well, and the other thing that and Mary Beth alluded to this, the stress factor compromises your immune system. And I've like 2 to 3 years, the 2 years before my diagnosis, I was under unrelenting, unbelievable stress over a family matter with my sibling. And I remember just sitting on the swing on the porch, just rocking because I couldn't do anything else. So that's, I don't think I don't know that it causes breast cancer, but it cripples your immune system. So your body can't do what it's meant to do, which is naturally fight off.
Yeah, I totally believe that because of research and then just what we go through in life. And when I've heard both of you talk about what you all did as far as a profession, even if you're good at those professions, they are high stress professions. And even when I look back at myself, I'm like, wow, I've gone through so much trauma in my life. And I'm like, I'm sure that contributed to some of the things that I had medically going on. So no, I totally believe stress is like really up there. High.
No, you can't dwell there. You can't say, oh, it's my fault. It is
Right.
nobody's fault if you
Right.
get sick. It just happens. And then you have to figure out how to deal with it.
Absolutely.
Well, the thing,
Oh, go ahead.
we did talk about the lack of control. Like when you're diagnosed, you realize how little you have control over. So for those of us who like to be in control and are used to thinking they're in control, we seize upon the things that we can do. And so for me, I did this really like over the top dietary, like I just went extreme. I gave up coffee. I mean, that's how extreme it was.
Ooh,
That is
girl, good for you, because I
God.
haven't done that yet.
I started drinking it again, but I did I also became a vegetarian, which I truly believe in that that diet for me, and that lifestyle, and that I've continued with. But some of the other stuff, like, I try to do organic when I can, but I was like bringing my own filtered water ice to parties. I mean, I went over the top crazy, and I've kind of drifted back a little bit, but what I realized is there are things that we can control. We can't maybe control the things that are happening in our lives that are stressful, but we
Right.
can go for a walk, we can meditate, we can talk with friends. And so it's finding a way amidst the chaos of life, finding habits that are healthy and
Right.
that are in our control, because so much isn't. And I don't blame myself for getting breast cancer, but now that I know how I compromised my immune system, I lost a lot of weight. I mean, it was pretty bad right before I was diagnosed. I know I have the tools to take care of my body now.
Right. Right.
So I'm much more aware of that.
And I think that's important. Like Renee and both of you said, you shouldn't beat yourself up, but what you can do to minimize certain things in your life that is an issue, do that. And trying to just live life, because we found out through having this, that life is something that in time is something that's precious. So with that being said, so you get this diagnosis, your life, you're living life, you are in control, you get the diagnosis, you're going through treatment. How was that for each of you, far as the treatment part? I know you said that you did have support, but mentally, how did that play? Because if I'm not mistaken, you all met in a support group, correct?
No, we'll have to go into, no.
Oh, why did I think a support group? Oh, well, okay, so you can
It's close.
Okay, yeah,
so go ahead and share that, and then, just go ahead and talk.
Okay.
Yeah, share
no.
how you got through it, Renee, what you did.
Yeah.
And
What I did?
yeah, like to get through it, your support. And
Oh, well, like we said, our families, we had huge support from our families and everything, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So basically,
I don't know what.
but how was your treatment, even like far as mentally, like how did that play on your mental health? Because a lot of Here for the Girls is also about the mind.
Okay, so now let's see where we're going. I'm going back.
It's okay.
It was interesting, and I try to tell the young women when I get to talk to them this. The first 3 weeks, well, first of all, I got the diagnosis, and immediately, as I think most people do, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, and who's going to raise my children? I mean, that's your first thought. Absolutely. And then I had told you, said, I had all of this comfort and my higher power, just like I knew I was embraced and loved. But the treatment, I mean, for me, I think, one day I went into the radiation treatment center, and everybody was dressed like a Wizard of Oz character because it was Halloween. and the cowardly lion gave me my radiation. So, you know, that, and one day, like the third day in to my radiation of 36, 38 treatments, that friend of mine who had started this whole thing had been re-diagnosed, and we were doing radiation back to back pretty much. Well, after my treatment, I went in and changed into my health fairy costume and came out, and the radiologist went, "Oh my gosh." I said, "Look what your radiation does to you people." And he said, "Oh no, you've only had 3 treatments. It could not have done that to you."
Not this time.
So I had that a sense of humor. I mean, that's what it was. It was the faith, the love of people, and the sense of humor. But what's the other thing I wanted to say was my first 3 weeks of having been diagnosed, I was probably the first one in my group of friends to, I was not as young as Mary Beth, but I was still on that side. The first 3 weeks, everybody who talked to me about breast cancer gave me a horror story. And I think it was, they were trying to say, "Oh, well, we understand how you feel." So they just told me about all these people who had died, their family members, their friends. And I just took it. I sat there and listened. So what I say to people is, don't do that. If somebody starts to give you some kind of a negative story, just say, "I know you mean well, but I really just want to hear positive stories right now." And the first person who gave me a positive story was my American Cancer Society Reach for Recovery volunteer. And she was like, they try to match you up for just a brief meeting with somebody who's had the similar diagnosis, similar treatment. She was in her 70s, played golf 4 days a week. I went, "Oh my gosh, if she can do it, I can do it." So yeah, I mean, that was my treatment, was that. It was not, I mean, I didn't have to have chemo, so blessedly.
Right.
In fact, I didn't trust my oncologist when she told me that. And I'm going, I'll do anything to raise my children. So she sent me for a second opinion down to a bigger place down in North Carolina, and they concurred with her. But that second opinion thing, if you should be, if you want one, you should get one.
Right.
And if you have a doctor that balks at that, find another doctor.
Absolutely.
My doctor set it up for me. I mean, you want, they know you want to know everything you can.
You do, because the first thought I had was like, how long do I have to live? Like,
Of course,
I was stage 0, but I didn't, you just go for the worst. But I had been fighting for almost 20 years to even get properly treated. So it's like, oh, this must be terrible, and that's the first thing you usually think about is your time or your
yeah. Because you think it's an immediate death sentence.
Yep.
I mean, that because of that word. But and that's why I think what we do with Here for the Girls is so important, because there are people who are going to say no.
Absolutely.
We're going to be walking with you. So Mary Beth, tell about your part of treatment, and then I'll talk about how we met.
Okay. Well, when I was first diagnosed, the tumor was almost 5 centimeters, and they knew I had lymph node involvement. They didn't know how far it had spread. So until I was able to get the PET scan and find out that thankfully it had not gone beyond the lymph nodes, it was really scary. And I remember waking up every morning, and it was only like a week or 10 days, but I remember waking up every morning just so grateful to be waking up, and everything sounded better. The birds sounded better. The sun felt warmer. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I want to keep living. And I did the same thing. I'm like, am I going to see my young boys get to adulthood and be squatters in my home? But it was such a relief. And I remember thinking, oh, thank God I only have stage 2B breast cancer. And I think that's kind of a statement for how I try to get through the whole thing, and how I see my life now is focusing on the positive. And, 2 weeks earlier, I didn't have breast cancer at all, but I was so grateful that it wasn't worse than it was. And I think I've also been able to keep that perspective of, even though sometimes I don't want to get up in the morning, I'm just so happy that I have that choice to get out of bed in the morning, and I make that choice to get out of bed in the morning because a lot of people don't have that choice. Renee and I have lost so many friends over the years, but I got through it. It's a head game. I mean, it's a huge head game. And I remember trying to read into what my doctors were telling me. Like, ooh, she looked at me funny when she said that.
Yeah.
You know, really mean what she's saying, or is this bad, or is this good? And just learning to take things at face value. And Renee and I share the same oncologist, and we actually go to our appointments together.
Oh, yeah, picture. Not too long ago, right?
She calls us the twins.
Yeah. But
and we do this because Mary Beth can remember stuff about me that I can't remember. So we've always laughed that she's my brain.
Yeah. So I was really lucky too to have a very caring and compassionate oncologist who supported. Like, I brought her this study. I'm like, oh my God, I have this weird subtype, and it's because I was ER positive, PR negative, and HER2 negative, and that's kind of a weird subtype. Yeah. And I was Googling it, and there should be a huge disclaimer on Googling, because you can scare yourself to death Googling it. And I found this study, and there was a higher risk of death and blah, blah, blah. And I brought it to her, and she, in the office, I remember her looking it up and talking me through each point. And so it is having to remind yourself, of the things that you can control and letting go those you can't. And that's how I got through it. That, and my brothers and my dad, and my husband, of course, and the kids were always there for me. And I'll tell this quick story because it was so impactful for me. And I told it at the gala last year, but the day that I was getting ready for my surgery, it was the day after Halloween. And I had been trick-or-treating all week. I'd been mourning the upcoming loss of my breasts, even though, they had served me well. They had, I nursed my babies, but I was really mourning their loss. And I remember we went to Busch Gardens, and I pulled the bar down, the handle, on the roller coaster on the Loch Ness Monster. And I'm like, I will never feel that bar up against my breasts again.
Right.
Even though you don't need breasts to ride a roller coaster. That's just where my head was. And trick-or-treating with the kids, I'm like, I'll never trick-or-treat with my breasts again. But that morning of the surgery, I knelt down in the foyer and I told the kids, hey, I'm going to get surgery. I'll be home tomorrow to get you off the bus, I promise. Do you know what mommy is coming home without? And my 5-year-old said, cancer. And that's really the most important thing. And it took a 5-year-old to remind me.
Yep. Wow, that's beautiful.
So yeah, the family and everything. But I didn't have a support group. I got through it I didn't have any friends that had breast cancer. My mom was gone. My grandmother was gone. I really didn't know anybody. And my friend was trying to talk me into go, and she didn't have breast cancer, but she's like, oh, there's this retreat at Centera for breast cancer survivors.
That's right. It was the retreat.
Yep. And she's like, you should go. And I'm like, no, that's just not for me. And she goes, well, I'll go with you. And again, she wasn't a breast cancer survivor, but she had so many scares. They knew her by her first name. I think they had a poster of her. I'm just kidding. But they knew her really well. Right. So she got me in, and she got herself in, even though it was closed, and they lost my registration. There were so many reasons I wasn't even supposed to be there. And it wasn't even for women in active treatment. I was still in active treatment, but somehow I got there, and the good health fairy was there. And the rest is history.
Well, let me share this one thing. The reason why I asked you all to talk about before is because I want people to see that even though treatment may change over the years with research, this emotional battle that we go through doesn't really change. So that's why it was so important. I want you all to really kind of hone in on that a little bit, because is significant, even for doctors or whomever who's listening, to understand that thing called chemo brain and cognitive impairment and all those things. That's real. Scan anxiety is real. It can still happen even 20, 30 years out from having been diagnosed with breast cancer. So thank you all for going back. I know some of it you probably like, do I remember it? But thank you, because I want people to see that correlation, that treatment might change, but that emotional part is usually the same.
It's heavy. It is really heavy.
That is so important. And that really is a great segue into our meeting, because yeah, we neither of us had a support group, of people that we knew with breast cancer. And so I remember I said I was at that retreat every year as the Good Health Fairy. So I'm there, and the yoga part's about to happen. And this young woman with no hair, one eyelash, she called it her survivor eyelash, and a baseball cap walks through the door after getting her yoga mat from her car. And my pickup line has always been, "You're beautiful." And that was Mary Beth. And we started talking, and she said to me later that anybody who could think she was beautiful at that moment, she wanted to get to know better. So we started talking, and she said, this is lovely. Today is lovely, but I feel so out of place here. Most of the women in this room could be my mother or my grandmother, and they're not going to they don't understand what I'm going through. They don't understand that I have these young children, that got this career, that I've got to get this new job off, going. And I have a young randy husband, kind of thing. And the body image, they just don't get it. And I said, yep, that's probably very true. And I said, there were two other younger women at that retreat that day. And I knew two others from my work with I started doing volunteer work for Reach to Recovery, because that woman had been so impactful in my life. And I said, I know two other young women. And I said, would you like to get together and talk? And the three there said yes. I called the other two, and that was September. The next month, October 2007, Mary Beth, or six? Six.
Wow.
I invited them to my home on a Sunday afternoon for tea and talk. And we sat around in my living room, and it was what everybody needed. It was magical. And that was the start of this whole thing. And to just shorten it, we started collecting more and more young people. We sent out tacky lime green flyers, because Mary Beth hated the color pink at that point, to doctors' offices, telling them what we were doing. We were having this monthly support group for young women in the Williamsburg area. And then people started coming from Newport News and other places. And we started collecting these young women. And then we started hearing this recurring theme of, I went to my doctor because I had this lump or I had this pain, and they told me, oh, don't worry about that. You're too young to have breast cancer. And they didn't do any tests. And sadly, that is still happening today. Not as often, but it still happens. And Mary Beth loved to say back then, if you get a group of men angry, you're likely to get a brawl. But you get a group of women angry, and you're going to end up with a cause. And that's how what was called back then Beyond Boobs was formed. We said, we have to tell the world. And we were planning on world domination in the beginning. It's taken us a little while. We're getting there, but not there yet. We have to tell the world that young women can get this disease, and we have to tell all women what they need to know, the things we wish we had known about our breasts and our breast health, and how you advocate for yourself and taking charge. And so we would have stayed that little small support group, except that we wanted to get that word out. And we came up with this idea at one of the meetings, and it was that we would put it all into a calendar. And that whole thing, how much time, we don't have enough time to go into that. How that whole thing happened was just, we used to have these little angel cards we'd pass around, because we wouldn't go around and say, tell us your story. We'd pass out these little cards that had a word on them. And then you just reached in and took it out. And it was whatever the word was what you were supposed to talk about, how it meant, what it meant to you.
Right.
And so one person had, Mary Beth, was yours educate?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one woman
One
had
was adventure
adventure,
and the other was birth.
birth, right. And she said, I don't want to
Mm.
birth a baby. But anyway, what we ended up doing, we birthed a nonprofit. We created the calendar, and the calendar, you're a calendar ambassador this year in 23. This was our very, will
Yes.
it show up or not?
Yep, you can see
This
it.
was our very first calendar, and it's a calendar to live by. And that's Mary Beth on the cover. And this is us that
Wow.
first year. Look at that. Is that incredible? And so we packed it full of all the information that we thought young women should know. That in my picture that look at this. And this is an organization about joy and life and living life with an exclamation point. So that's our precious Pat. And we've lost her since then. But I mean, it was just phenomenal. Look at this with this young woman with her mother. And it was just so beautiful. I'll show you the Good Health Rate just because you need to see her back then. How do I show this? How do I do that?
Oh yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about now because I seen that picture. I think I put it in the reel.
Yeah, it's in the reel. But that's the
Yeah.
Good Health Fairy. She was a little
Oh.
younger. But anyway, and then you see us right now, but this is our picture in your calendar.
Yes.
And I said, Mary Beth, I don't want to put many pictures of us now because we look so old. And she goes, Renee. Well, she used to say, aging is a privilege not everybody gets to enjoy.
That is so true.
But what she said to me today was, Renee, we are old. And we want to be old. We want to still be here.
Absolutely.
She's right,
Yeah.
that because we don't know, we're not promised tomorrow. So every day is a treasure. But that's how I met Mary Beth. Creating that calendar is why we became a nonprofit, because we had to raise the money to print the dadgum thing. And that started this.
Wow.
17 years later now, it's phenomenal how much our support has changed for the better. Back then, we just were a group of women in a room. And if somebody was falling apart, one of us would take them into the kitchen. We always had great snacks. I mean, we were the snack queen.
It's all about the food.
It's all about the food. And they were always healthy snacks. If somebody new was there getting ready to have a mastectomy, somebody who'd already had one would go in the bathroom with her and show her the scars and tell her what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
And we got to the point you didn't even go into the bathroom unless your husband was home.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And one of our quotes is in every single calendar to live by is that C.S. Lewis quote, what friendship is formed at the moment you realize, what, you too? I thought I was the only one.
Yep. Wow.
And so you get it. And the women that are in your calendar get it. And it's for Mary Beth and me to see where this has gone. She used to joke, we were building the airplane while we were flying it. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. We
didn't know where we were flying either.
I know. We started this organization on our dining room table only because we saw a need. There was no support for young women in this area. There was support for older women, but not specifically for younger women. And their needs are so different.
Right.
And we just, we got mad and said, well, okay, this is what we're going to do because the world needs to know. And here you are 17 years later saying how much this organization means to you. You could not honor us anymore than by saying that, because that's now going to that's what we want to be. We want to do. We want to be there for young women who are facing this trauma. It's a trauma. Yeah. And we want to be there to help them get through it.
And Renee and I, we started it, and I call her my co-conspirator, partner in crime, best friend, sister. There's so many things to me, but we started it, and we have been so fortunate to have amazing women join the team at Here for the Girls as staff, who are able to take our vision and build upon it and take it farther than we could have ever possibly taken it, just the two of us. So that's been a huge privilege. But I've always said, and I mean it, the heart of the organization is the women we serve. You are the ones that make it work. You're the ones who are there for each other. You're the ones, reaching back and pulling that person that came behind you forward and holding her hand and hugging her and wiping her tears and laughing with her. And it's
Showing
the
her your
women.
stars. Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's those women
Yeah.
who are the heart and soul of Here for the Girls. And for René and I mean, it's a huge privilege, and I'm humbled by it all.
Yeah.
That is so
And I'll
beautiful.
add to that, that team that we have, those women on our, we call them our family, our Here for the Girls family, those women, and now there's a man actually on board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that team, they pour so much of themselves into this organization, into serving these women. I don't think anybody realizes how much they give and how much volunteer time. I mean, they give weekends and nights and, just huge amount of love and care to creating support that is meaningful to our young women. And
Wow.
at the same time that we're trying to do this support, we have to raise the money to be able to do it.
Right. Right.
And it's sometimes so difficult because we want to be there and have our women participate, but sometimes we just have to do things just to raise money so that we can keep providing the support. And it's hard to explain, and it's hard to do sometimes. But if I could find a sugar daddy who would fund this organization, I'd give him Mary Beth.
Okay, we're moving right along from that one. You said you can't edit, right, Christina?
No, sorry. Not unless I get a sugar daddy and he pays for it. I know.
But it's that, I mean, we too have been so incredibly blessed to be part of this family. And the funny part is we are so different. I mean, we are different in every single way.
Well, you're from
Politically,
Texas, and I
northerner.
say, yep,
You're a northerner?
I say I was Yankee born, Southern bred, but I'm I'm a northerner.
We
Very,
spoke to a political group, and I introduced ourselves as I was the right breast and she was the left. And it's true.
and she's tall and I'm short, and she's blonde and I'm still
Beautiful.
some brunette. But the really interesting thing is, as opposite as we may be in some physical ways and some of our upbringing, our values are so aligned because we couldn't have done this, and we both know that love is the greatest power on earth.
Yeah.
And everyone gets us confused. I get called Renee, she gets called Mary Beth, so it doesn't really matter. We're kind of interchangeable, except we need to be together for our brains to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I have secondhand chemo brain just from hanging out with her.
If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about some of the things that Here for the Girls have to offer to newly diagnosed or someone who may not necessarily be newly diagnosed, but under the age of 51. What are some of the services that you have?
Well, first of all, let me just clarify. You just have to be diagnosed under the age of 51.
Diagnosed, right.
Because
Yeah.
you could be older than 51 and still need us, because sometimes it's after treatment. It's even further down the line. Even if you're not, have a recurrence, we call it the stalker, that fear thing that, of recurrence. And so we're there anytime, anybody diagnosed under 51. We wish that we could be there for everyone, all ages, but we don't have enough bandwidth. But we offer so many more services now than we used to. It's sort of a three-pronged thing. So we have the educational part, which is the guide to caring for yourself, which is inside the calendar, and it comes out. And see, it's just detachable, and it has all this wonderful, calendar detachable, has all this wonderful health information in it about breast cancer and genetics and healthy living and all of that. So this is a great resource. And so we have webinars, we have doctors who come together from all different health systems and do webinars and that kind of thing. We have lots of that. So there's a whole educational component. And then we have the what we call the hip chick part, which is we are hope, inspiration, and power chicks. So we are hip chicks. And we used to have just peer support where women would come together in groups, and you would have a newly diagnosed and a woman who was way long into metastatic disease. And you get those in the same room. And we started realizing the one with metastatic doesn't want to talk because she's afraid she's going to scare the newly diagnosed woman to death, and vice versa. And so what we recognized is that we need more targeted support. So we have those events where women can get together. We have lots of go beyond pinks, like people will do stuff and they'll invite, we had a flower arranging thing the other day, which was great fun. And newly diagnosed women were there and some longer time. And I noticed, they were arranging flowers, but they are chatting up a storm about where they are in their journey. And so we still have a lot of that. And we have some in-person groups still, and we have online groups. But here's the third prong is I guess we call it the social work part, where we used to just have peer facilitators. And it's really hard. So it's a woman who's had cancer, is young, and now she's trying to keep everybody together. So now we have more trained social work background facilitators with a peer facilitator. And like there's a group for just metastatic women. There's a group now for newly diagnosed women, a group for those in treatment. There's a group for those further out. And they're virtual. A lot of them are virtual. So we have women from all over the country now, but you have to get into our system. You have to be part of our family. You have to be one of the girls. And you do that by going on our website and filling out a welcome form. And then on that welcome form, you will be you'll get a phone call, you'll get contact. There are so many different types of support and degrees of support for whatever you need. We have women who have never been to a meeting, but they love to come to events. They love to hang out. They love the educational part. We have a secret national Facebook page, where women get on there, and if they have a question, they woke up in the middle of the night with this horrible fear, and they talk about it, and then all at once, all these elephants start. We call each other our elephants because in the wild, if an elephant is wounded or shot, two elephants will come alongside and lean in to hold that elephant up until she either dies or heals. And that's what our women do for each other. So there's tons of elephants out there that want to help each other. And I haven't really, and we're getting ready to launch a program with even greater in-depth support for women who need it, because mental health, you've said it, it's the emotional mental part. We joke that the doctors have your fronts, but we have your back. And it's true, because we know the emotional mental toll that this diagnosis takes on you. So we're getting ready to launch a program where we will offer one-on-one kinds of professional counseling if women need it. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that, but there it said. So, but it's because what we try to do is listen to the needs of our members, and what we're hearing is we need help with this whole mental health part, with this, because just like people can get PTSD, whatever it is.
PTSD, which we do.
Okay, which is a trauma. It's from a trauma. Well, a breast cancer diagnosis is a trauma, and often you need just a little jolt of even more intense kind of help and therapy. So we will have people who understand that for breast cancer patients, and that will be available in the future.
I think that's beautiful because, I'm a qualified mental health professional, so I think it's absolutely phenomenal to have both dynamics, where you have the peer support over here, but okay, fine. Well, we do this peer support because I'm a co-facilitator with Tara with the newly diagnosed group. So we
So why
had
am I
that.
explaining all this?
No, you're explaining it because you are the founder. I want to hear it from you. So, but I think it's beautiful that we have that support, because some people, and I found this, especially working in mental health, some people don't ever want to see a therapist at all, ever in life, because it's like they have the stigma behind it, or either they just feel like they don't need that. They can't relate depending on how the therapist is. So to have that peer support in conjunction, even sometimes if we're doing a group and it's like, you know what, they might need a little extra, we can send them, okay, well, let's contact the social worker, and just link them together. And I think having both of those dynamics, like, that's powerful.
Well, even the better part of it is the leader of our social work team is one of our members. She was a facilitator, and now she leads the social work team. I mean, so she gets it. She knows. She's phenomenal. So I said, Mary Beth was saying, with this team, I mean, we just go,
Yeah.
they are amazing. I mean, you couldn't, and they get along. I mean, and they're a bunch of women.
That's a miracle, huh?
Anyway.
Well, love is the strongest power on earth.
It is. It really is. Are there any? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add one thing to that. We started with the peer support because that's all Renee and I were capable of, not being licensed professionals. And as she mentioned, when they were doing that flower arranging activity or whatever type of activity that we would do, even some of the support groups, when we would use those angel cards and identify a word that would resonate with the woman to talk about, we have to remember that breast cancer happens in the middle of our lives. And just because we have it doesn't mean we want to talk about it all the time. And at these support group meetings, we can be ourselves and we can talk about all the other challenges that are going on, or we can be flower arranging and it's a very casual thing for someone who doesn't want to, maybe they want to be doing something while they're talking about the challenges they're facing. There are all these varieties of ways to talk about and receive support, that everybody is different in how they need it. So that's really cool. That's really cool too about it.
Are there any events that you all want people to know about that you all have? Any major events or anything? I know we have like the golf tournament and things of that. I didn't know if you want to.
So I'll just real quick. We have three
three
signature, we call them signature events. They are fundraisers. We don't receive any federal or state or government funds to run this organization. And we have to pay our staff and we have to pay for rent. And there's a whole lot of stuff that you have, that you need. And oh, by the way, our staff, who is so phenomenal, could be making so much more money in the public, in another sector, yet they choose to stay right where they are because they love these women so much. But those three signature events are the gala, the golf tournament, and the run. We just had the run. The gala is coming up. It's going to be so different this year. It's a much smaller thing, so we can't have as many of our women as we wish we could. It is a fundraiser, so we're trying to get people there who will help us in the future by supporting us, companies and that kind of thing. And that's sad to me that we can't have all the fun of the women, but we're going to do it in other ways. We just have to balance, and people don't recognize often that nonprofits are a business, and we're a business. We have to be able to do what we do. We have to raise the funds. I used to say, I wish I had some widgets to sell. And I don't. If I could sell something, the only thing we have to sell is hope, and we give that away. So we don't make any money on that. So it as far as big events, I think if you get on our website, it's hereforthegirls.org, and it's all spelled out. Our hashtag on Instagram is capital H, the number 4 TG_org. you can go on our website, it's hereforthegirls.org, and find out all that information. If you're a young woman out there and have not joined up with us, or if you hear this and know of young women, anyone diagnosed under the age of 51, encourage them to go on the website. They may think, oh, I don't need that support. There's so much more than just that, whatever that support is on that website. There's a whole plethora of information and blogs and ways to reach each other. And Mary Beth, you want to add to that?
No, I think you've done a great job explaining it all. But yeah, we just want to be there for people in whatever way they need us to be there for them. And I guess the last thing I would say on that was one of the greatest things that has come out of this for me are, and I think for many of our women, are the lifelong friendships that have been formed. Because like I said, we're moms, we're professional working women, we're we're volunteers, we're serving our community, we're wives, we're we might be taking care of parents. We're multi-dimensional people who happen to share this disease, but we can be there for each other in so many other ways, in addition to being there to hold each other's hands. And that's the beauty of this and the power of this is the women.
I think that's, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know you're running out of time, but you asked us to come up with a word, and I don't know if Mary Beth has one. Mary Beth, did you have a word?
Yep.
Go. I'm just going to take over from our hostess.
I know, right?
Renee,
but I did want to share this. I did want to share this really quick, because the reason why I had you to share all that information, some people don't like going to websites and stuff. So I was like, I want you to share it verbally. But yes, go to the website. Also, if you become a member, we also have a hub. That hub is extraordinary because it has a ton of information that's even more detailed, where you get your blogs and things from one another. So yeah, I wanted to definitely put that.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, thank you. See, you should have done the whole thing.
Absolutely not.
Now, I was thinking you should do a podcast, Renee, and I would offer to do it with you, but I don't think you need me, because you're really good at saying Mary Beth says, and Mary Beth says, and I love you for that.
Hilarious. Yes,
my word.
I guess feel free to take over now. Yes, your word.
Thank you, Christina. And you've been exceptional at navigating this with us, because we both have so much to say, and we love sharing our story. And absolutely. As Renee said, we love that you are sharing the love too, in a way that's reaching a lot of people and making a huge difference. And we love you for that.
Yeah.
So my word is gratitude.
I knew it was going to be.
I'm just grateful for everything that's gotten me to this place where I am now, and everything that I have, the people in my life, the opportunities that I have, my health, nature, the world. I mean, it's gratitude, and I'm very grateful. And I'm grateful to you, Christina, for this opportunity. And Renee, I love you too.
I do know that. So my word is, I have two words.
Of course you do.
Yeah, you took over anyway, so feel free.
Okay. My word is, first of all, live.
Yes.
We go along through our day, and I was going along through my life, not noticing it. And because we go along through our day, not noticing that we're breathing. And yet when you go to the doctor and they say, take a deep breath, and all at once you notice that you're breathing, and you think about that. But it just happens, and life just happens. But once you have something like a cancer diagnosis or any significant trauma in your life, I think you become more aware. And it did for me anyway. And what I learned is you don't sweat the small stuff. And pretty much it's all small stuff in the big picture. And my house burned down 2 years ago, and I stood there and watched it. And I'm not saying I'm heroic or anything, but my neighbors were around these young women with tears coming down their face. And I'm just standing there looking at it, and I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all. But it was like, okay, well, we'll just get through this one. Because it's stuff. It was a house. It was lovely, and it was stuff. And by the way, I'm moving back in right this week, finally, after 2 years. But you know, it's stuff, and it's the small stuff, and the relationships, the love. That's what's valuable, and we just have to embrace that. And so part of that is my second word, which is forgive. And if we forgive everyone, everything as fast as we can, which sort of also includes don't take anything personally. Or if you do, forgive him immediately, because it's typically not about you, it's about them. But if we could do that forgiving thing, it just frees our spirits up. It just frees us up to love, because that non-forgiveness is such a heavy, heavy burden to carry and drag along. And you sometimes have to forgive yourself. And that's been hard for me in my life, to learn to forgive myself when I've screwed up. But it's part of that living.
Yep.
We love you.
Don't forget your songs.
Oh,
Come on, you supposed to be there. You supposed to be in charge.
Yeah, I actually remembered.
okay.
Don't
I'll
forget
talk
your
about
songs.
one of them.
So they had 2 songs, however, only one I could put on the reel. So they're gonna share what their songs were, and then
Okay.
I'll wrap it up after that.
Thank you. So I'll talk about one, Renee, and you can talk about the other.
Which one are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the one that Christina actually picked, which
Okay,
is the
good, because-
Celine Dion
okay.
song, that
Got it.
I Am Alive.
Okay.
And the reason that I thought that was a great song to represent us and what we were doing is, for the first, I don't know, maybe 12 years of the calendar, that was the song that we played as the calendar was being presented to the public.
Yep.
And the reason I picked that song, it's actually a love song, but the reason I picked that song was because the words "I am alive." And for everyone in that room, and for us today, right now, we are alive. This is what we have. And to stay focused on that, that was important. So I love that song, and I'll let Renee explain the other one that we picked that didn't get onto the reel.
I know, but what's the name of the other one? Sisters.
We Are Family by
Oh,
Sister
We Are
Sledge.
Family. Okay, thank you. I knew that. I keep wanting to call it Sisters, but it's We Are Family.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if you don't know that one, look it up on Spotify, because it's about being sisters. And that is the thing about this diagnosis. And you mentioned it, Christina, is that, and Mary Beth, the lifelongness of the friendships. There's something about that diagnosis that bonds you immediately with somebody else who's had it. Our women are so diverse in so many ways, and that we want that. But there's that immediate feeling of sisterhood and family. And it is just, I just marvel at that bond that is formed when 2 people come together. I mean, like you and I, when we met, and yeah, and we are family. And it goes back to that love thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you, ladies, for all of that. Now I'm going to share with you about what I think of you 2. So as you were talking, I was hearing vision. You had a vision. And I think of the scripture in the Bible in Habakkuk, where it talks about write down the vision, make it plain so men can run with it. And you all have honored that. You heard the vision, you seen the vision, you implemented the vision, you ran with it. You trailblazed in an area where a lot of people had not dared gone. Even looking at the picture on the calendar on the front with Mary Beth, that was kind of risque for that time, that era, because now we are taking off our shirts and stuff. But that was for you to do that. That took a step and a leap of faith, regardless if you know that or not. But you all are visionaries that implemented it, and you've allowed other people to run with that. With that being said, you have been genuine to the calling on your life. Please continue to be genuine to it. Do not allow nothing to distort it. At the same time, I know business, and I know that you have to answer the boards and things of that nature, but overall, don't forget the calling. don't forget what you've been placed on this earth to do, regardless if it's with Here for the Girls or whatever you're doing in your personal lives. But continue to receive the visions, continue to run with them, continue to give them to other people to run with them, but continue to please be genuine, because through your generosity, through you just being who you are, look what is created. So I just wanted to share that with you ladies.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for that. And for me personally, I have no qualm about knowing that our vision is being carried forward. You know, we said it's a business. Yeah, that's part of it. But no, underlying everything our team does is the legacy that Mary Beth and I started. And they are determined to continue that on. And that's the vision. And, you know, I said you have to balance it with that other, but no, there is no, serving our young women is paramount into what we do. And I think that what's so important is that this team has been listening and continues to listen to the needs of our women. And that's why we're adding all these different types of support, like the one you do for newly diagnosed. I mean, we used to have that room full of women of all, you know, phases of their journey. And it's so much better if you can do it the way these women, you know, our team is now doing it. And so we used to joke that I've been saying that too much. Mary Beth and I we said we were the kite, and that like when Chris Schwab came on board, she's so organized, she's so dedicated. She was the string on our kite. And she's the one that made this organization soar. I mean, we would probably our kite would have just gone, you know, but she kept us grounded enough that it could build and be still existing 17 years after we started it.
Yeah.
And that's a God thing.
Yeah, it's the vision. It's the vision that he gave you to have other people to run with it. So I just want to share that with you ladies.
Well, thank you. That means
thank you so
a
much.
lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've helped my life. You know, I still represent my shirt.
I love it.
Thank you. And thanks for allowing us this opportunity. It's been a huge pleasure. Had a lot of fun. And I love you.
I love you.
You.
I love you. Well, this is the end. Oh, yes, we always make a heart at the end of our meetings. This is the end of another episode of Our Scars Speak. Remember that our scars, our mental and physical scars, speak a story that can help heal the wounds of others. So with that being said, we love you and we will see you next week. Bye.